Okay, so over the course of my career in drawing War and Peace Man, going at it in various configurations, I have gotten a couple of really, really lovely comments from people who like the way I draw uniforms and who would uh, perhaps be interested in a little tutorial of how I do it. Not that I should be any kind of authority on how to draw anything in particular. But I do quite enjoy drawing those uniforms. I think they're really sexy and great folds are to be had. And I have drawn a lot of them. So I thought this might be fun. This is going to be very inspired by the, like, by this point, almost decade-old video called Real Fakers, Not Especially Entertaining, marker coloring tutorial by Erica Wester. Absolutely iconic video of all time. Inspired me a lot when I was like 14. I'm gonna try to match her impeccable vibes. So here's a little collage of various War and Peace guys wearing more or less clothes. I thought these might be some good examples of like how I kind of go about it. And I did collect all of these screenshots over here. I did collect a lot of like visual references for actual uniforms or for uniforms like worn by Lucas Steele in his version of Anatole. But I thought I might leave all of that like research and reference for later because once I start talking about it, I might never stop. And I want to get the actual drawing part of this tutorial out first so that no one has to listen to me talk about, Russian Napoleonic era fashions for like 20 minutes. Righto. So let's see how I approach drawing a character wearing such a uniform and what I would keep in mind while doing it. Let's get ourselves a nice, like, not actiony, but like a nice twisted pose so we could have a lot of wrinkles and stuff. I'm gonna kind of loosely copy the pose from this drawing because I really like how Anatole came out here. And I think that was the drawing that I got this particular comment on. And it's got like a nice S-shaped curve to it. So should be able to show off his, physicality really well. So I think an important part, well, first of all, these uniforms are like very form hugging, and I do think they were historically, like obviously I draw them that way because it's hot, but I do think they were historically like pretty tight on the body. And I did actually find like a comment from the 1810s or 1820s or whatever by someone saying that like these uniforms are so unforgiving when it comes to showing off your physique that some soldiers would actually like put stuffing in their, like, to add volume to their chests and their thighs and presumably their ass and their calves and stuff like that. So for a character such as Anatole, my favorite horrible man, whose incredibly sexy physique is such a big part of his character, I think it's a great choice of, clothing style. So you're gonna want to be following the silhouette pretty closely. And I think it's important to kind of have the torso and the waist segmented in ways that make sense. So I know maybe some of you have heard like the bean theory of the torso. There's kind of like this bean shape, and like here's where the ass is, and here's where the tits are, more or less. And that is kind of true. But when I'm drawing it, I think I like to segment it into more distinct parts. So the way I kind of do it is here's sort of the rib cage. He's kind of like in 3/4. Like this is more or less the shape that the rib cage would be, with the ribs being kind of like this. If he were shirtless and showing them off. And this is like kind of the stomach area. Obviously, if a character is more fat, I would, show that off more. Anatole's pretty, well, I've drawn him various ways. Kind of here would be the belly button, and then kind of like here's sort of where like the hip bone would be. So that part is kind of its own segment, and then here's like the ass, and then here's like the thigh muscles. So, you know, obviously you don't really have to be thinking about all this, but just from like a lot of drawing those guys and thinking about how the folds would lie on the body, this is kind of how I think about it. So if I'm drawing this pose, I would probably, well, actually, let's start from the beginning, just so I can maybe make it a bit more natural. I would probably start with this part first, and kind of the waist, sort of. Then I might do the shoulders, just because that's kind of an important part of like the overall pose. So this is, I have no idea what these muscles are called, but this is like kind of the shoulder muscle that bulges very prominently. And if you look at like stylized animation, like if you look at some of the shirtless shots in Mulan, or like in Disney's Hercules, you can see that for a male character, the like tit line would flow directly from this muscle, which I think is like a useful way to orient yourself when you're drawing that shit. So a slightly different pose, just so I can show the like arms and the chest a bit better. Yeah, so because there's this muscle here, I think it's really fun to do like an arm wrinkle here. I pretty much add that, like if you look at this art, here's a wrinkle, here's a wrinkle, here's a wrinkle, here's a wrinkle. Like even when the pose doesn't really call for it, I just like putting it there because I think it like accentuates the, I don't know, the musculature in a fun way. So, you know, even if I didn't have this line running here because he is supposed to be wearing clothes, I still put that in there to kind of indicate the connection between the shoulder and the chest, and like, not where the seam would lie, because the seam would like here and here, but kind of where the different body parts would connect and where the fabric would, you know, bunch up, especially if the arm is, you know, going in this direction. Like if his arm was just hanging by his side, I might do a wrinkle more like here, because then you're kind of seeing the side of the arm. I'm going into too much detail. So yeah, I love doing this wrinkle here. It can be useful to add a seam here just to like know where the border between the shoulder and the torso is. I feel like I'm messing up the proportions somehow. Usually do the torsos a bit too small. It's useful to keep in mind like the center line of the body, just so that everything can be a bit proportional, and especially because, I mean, this is what I love about these uniforms most, is that they're double-breasted, which is like the most fun thing to draw and look at ever. They're so sexy. And like, I mean, this is why I included this drawing, for example. You can have them like kind of hanging open on one side, like here's where the buttonhole is, and here's where the button that would go in that hole is. And I mean, here as well. Just a lot of fun creative ways to have them hang open or half open, which, you know, obviously matters to me, seeing as I am what I am. So you've got buttons on both sides, and I think this would have been particularly realistic, but I do like to decorate them a little bit depending on the character. So for Anatole, I usually do this like snaky pattern. I guess because it strikes me as like very decorative and very flamboyant. And for Andre, I do like a very straightforward, just straight line connecting them, because he's such an uptight little asshole. And then if I am drawing Dolkov in his uniform, sometimes I do like a kind of V-shaped pattern. I think maybe because it reminds me of the shape of his mouth. But we were supposed to be drawing Anatole, so let's do his little wavy zigzag. If I'm drawing it with more detail, like in this drawing or something, you can see that I add kind of like a braid pattern, because that's kind of what it's supposed to be. But I mean, this is just a sketch, really. Yeah, the sash. extremely important. You know, you want your man, I want my man, I'm a lesbian, I want my fictional man to have a nice, easily distinguished, grabbable waist. So this is very important. Again, I kind of differentiate between characters. Anatole, I want him to look like really pretty and flamboyant, so I think a sash is a really nice kind of way to show that. And again, if you look at this drawing, you can see that sash like artfully falls off and drapes across his lap. This War and Peace really brings out the horny side in me. And then if I'm drawing either Dolokhov or Andrei, I usually just give them like a straightforward belt, because that is what they would have been actually wearing. Anatole is just a little bitch. Usually I'll have a bit of the uniform kind of peeking out underneath the sash, just for that little bit of added realism. Let's give him a nice butt. Not great at drawing butts, to be honest. Oh, and I mean, the butt kind of flows from the waist in, you know, whatever way it does. Different butt shapes flow differently. And then when it connects to the thigh, I think it's, especially if it's like in 3/4 like this, or from the front, I think it's useful to keep kind of the shape of the thigh muscle in mind. Again, I don't know what it's called. In fact, I'm not particularly good at leg anatomy or any anatomy really, but it would start kind of here, like in the upper front part of the thigh. And sometimes I will like accentuate a bit of shading or whatever. Get a nice butt wrinkle because of that underlying thigh shape. And again, just like places to put wrinkles in. Because these are very high-waisted uniforms, it's not like, you know, if you're drawing like a modern guy, just your average modern man, he'd probably have his trousers like here, maybe here if it's like low-waisted trousers, maybe here if it's particularly high-waisted trousers, and then he'd have like a belt or whatever. And you wouldn't see that much of the stomach, because like the crotch area is kind of right here. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but you know, something like that. Whereas with these uniforms, they start like all the way up here. Like the sash is probably around here, so the trouser line that you don't see is probably around here. So you get like this whole stomach area, and you know, even on a skinny person, the stomach is gonna be like a bulging shape underneath the fabric. So the fabric, you know, if I'm drawing it, especially if it's like a particularly wrinkly fabric, like something kind of stiff and thick that doesn't, you know, flow super smoothly, I will have this kind of V-shaped pattern. And then, I mean, this is like my favorite thing to do, is if they're sassily putting their leg out, then you will kind of get this like separate part here, where it's really nice to do a wrinkle as well. I mean, really, all I'm saying here is just put wrinkles in the right places, and the wrinkles are kind of what hints to the viewer at what the body's shape is like underneath. And I mean, that's what sex appeal is all about, right? I mean, that's what people talk about, where they're like, I think Digibro had Trixie the Golden Witch had a video about that a while ago, about like sex appeal hidden in plain sight, as in when characters are clothed but they kind of look naked, because the way that the fabric drapes over them just like tells you exactly what's going on in their clothes. This is getting off topic. I'm supposed to be drawing this guy, so maybe not quite so exaggerated, but I'll do like a little bit of, you know, fabric bunching here. Dick is somewhere around here. I don't really pay that much attention to what it looks like. What is he standing like? Oh yeah, he's like, this is his weight-bearing leg. And then this one is like, see, this is the wrinkle, and it's like very dramatically, you know, extending this way. I actually quite like drawing, I'm not great at drawing legs in general, but I like drawing like very muscular shapely legs, because then you can go kind of crazy with like the curves and the, what's the word, like concave and something. English isn't my first language, but like it depends on what angle you would be viewing the phi from. But like here, for example, you've got like this round bit here, and then kind of an S curve here, and then where the phi and the calf meet, you get to do like a nice, V dip shape. Obviously that calls for more wrinkles, naturally. And here, oh, I cut myself off, but drawing this leg here, it's like you have a curve, and then it kind of dips where the knee is. Here's the curve of like the underlying thigh muscle, and then again you get to do like this exaggerated, but there's still like a nice kind of dip curve here, and then just the slightest bit of S curve on the calf. And then I'm really bad at drawing shoes, so I'm not really including shoes very much in this tutorial, but that's kind of how it would go. So yeah, I don't know, just like if you've ever worn trousers that are a bit big on you, like I've recently modified. I got these trousers that are way too big up for me, and I had to like modify them a bit to fit me at all. But there's still like a lot of fabric bunching up in this area, and just like whenever I'm sitting down, it's just like so much bunching here and like so much loose fabric. And if you ever had that happen, or if you just had like particularly wrinkly trousers, you can kind of observe like where the wrinkles would form, and it's obviously like where the most bending is. Like you're gonna have wrinkles at the knee because that's where the thigh and the calf meet, and you're gonna have bunching and wrinkling like where the thigh and the kind of waist stomach area meets. And then if you go further up the body, you're gonna have bunching like where the ribs, which are very stiff form, meet like the fold of the stomach. How much depends on what kind of fabric you're wearing and how much of it there is and what your personal physique is and the exact shape of the body underneath. But yeah, going back to the uniform, I keep forgetting that's what this is supposed to be about. Obviously we have, like if you draw it from the back, you have really nice lapels, which are actually kind of convenient for me because I'm not very good at drawing butts, and those cover up the butt like a lot of the time. So for example here, if I wasn't quite happy with how the butt turned out, I can kind of just cut it off. And then lapels are also kind of nice, especially when I'm doing like block shading like here, because once I color them in, they provide like a nice contour. And again, just really show off the shape of that thigh, which is good if you like how it looks. Right, let's go back to the upper body, which again I made that. Oh my god, that's so unproportional. It looks so small. That's gonna be bothering me now if I don't fix it. See, what you don't see in my finished product is just how much tweaking and shit there is, and I could not function as like a traditional artist at this point, because digital just makes it so easy to correct your mistakes. In the sketching stage, at least. Yeah, more wrinkles. Again, elbows is like an obvious point, and I love doing like these kind of loopy wrinkles. I think they look so nice. If it's because this elbow is like very heavily bent, I do like prominent kind of bunching wrinkles that extend more in this direction. Like here. But if, for example, I have this arm or this arm, which is like not quite so, it's not quite such a sharp angle. I do think it's nice to have a wrinkle that goes kind of like, I mean, not so much, but kind of like across the body to that point of, you know, the shoulder. I think this is a tip that I got from this one artist. She's like a porn artist, and she makes like really good tutorials on anatomy and clothing and stuff. And then people upload them on the internet. I'm actually not sure if she posts them on like her Patreon or what. But I saw ages ago, I saw like a compilation of some of her tips, and even though most of it was subtitled in Chinese, like the visuals were so good. And I remember, like, I think I got the habit of drawing this wrinkle from her as well. Yeah, you know, let's give him a hand, and I don't know, imagine he's like holding Andre's hand or something. It's bullshit. And then I guess he can get a face. I suppose he deserves a head. Or not. I mean, he certainly doesn't deserve a head. Drawing's so goofy these days. I really notice how, like, if I'm going for my old art, I really notice how I used to draw him a lot more, like, devious. But these days, he just looks like, you know, like what he is, I suppose, which is just like a dumb little shit. But I do kind of like this more devilish look he has earlier on. Righto. Guess for the sake of firmness, I'll do someone other than Anatole as well. Oh. Here's an earlier example I did when I was testing out my kit. I actually kind of like how it came out. Again, torso just came out way too small. But I put a lot of attention to those thighs. Lovingly rendered. Let's do Andre. Andre and Dolokhov kind of have a similar physique. Dolokhov is really difficult for me to draw. So, Anatole, I picked him as my first example because, you know, he's so, like, muscular and just, like, bulging. Everything's bulging on him. And he's kind of easy to make he's easy to make an example out of because there's so many, like, curves and exaggerated shapes happening. Andre is a lot more, like, what did I call him? I think I described him as, like, straight and narrow or something. So nothing is as exaggerated. Like, if you look at these two examples below, which I'm kind of basing the pose off of, it's a lot more, you know, normal guy looking. But just because the uniform, like I said, is so cool, still looks pretty sexy. So, like I said, kind of more of a straightforward belt rather than a sash. Okay, so where we have like a belt buckle. My beautiful wrinkle. Here's my beautiful wrinkle. Yeah, double-breasted. Thingy. Lapel? Oh yeah, the neck part has like a nice shape to it as well. And sometimes there's probably been times where I drew it like really high up or something, where it kind of looks like very uncomfortable. I try to keep it to like a more manageable height and give it like a nice curved shape. Yeah, here's kind of where we have the seams. Here's like the cuffs, that's what it's called. Some nice wrinkles, and again, you have like this part essentially is like the stomach, which again, pretty flat on this guy, but like there's still gonna be some wrinkling, and he's still pulling like a slight contrapposto, I guess. So again, you have like a nice curve, or not curve, like a nice dip there. what should he be doing? He can be resting his hand on his sword. Every time I draw Andre, if he's not, in the process of having sex with Anatole, he's usually like posing for a portrait or something. And that's because I love having Andre be just like, I love torturing him with the pressure he feels to be the perfect representative for his family and like the perfect son. And that sword is way too high. Maybe it's stuck in the body of an enemy. Yeah, I said a while ago that it's a real shame that the Great Comet scenography doesn't include just like a huge fuck off portrait of Andre looming over everyone, because that would have been just a great way to convey, what his character is all about. Which, first of all, his character in the context of Great Comet is about not being there, but about having his presence still loom large. Great phrase. But then he's just so much about respectability and appearances and fulfilling the role you were born to fulfill. At least that's how I read him. Maybe I'm just projecting. Oh, I completely forgot about the epaulettes. I guess I don't usually draw Anatole of them just because, I don't know, I feel like, he is like an officer at some point, so he should definitely have them, and they are very decorative, so they do fit him. But I just like to give them to Andre because I feel like they visually emphasize how high he is in the ranks, and like he's a bit more respectable, whereas Anatole is not respectable. So, but epaulettes show up in Revolutionary Girl Lieutenant. That's why I kind of like drawing them. They also just tend to busy the page a bit, or not the page, like busy the figure a bit. And there's usually a lot going on around the shoulders anyway, so they're kind of in the way sometimes. Oh yeah, also sometimes I like to give them like a side. I think this probably originally I was just drawing it as a seam. Like a side seam going down the side of the leg. And then at some point it probably occurred to me that it looked kind of cool. Although I do think they have like a stripe like that going down the side of their legs in Great Comet costume, so it might have been from there as well. I have to make this guy miserable. He makes himself miserable. That's what I like about his character. Sure, he's born into hard times. He's gotta go to war or whatever, but like, he could be a rebel if he wanted to. Like, he could say, fuck you, Dad, gonna do what I want. And he could, I don't know, not get married. He could just be like a galore philosopher somewhere out there. But he doesn't. He, like, goes out and does all the things that are expected of him, even though they make him miserable. And even though, well, sometimes he knows they'll make him miserable. But he's just, like, committed. Anyway. What else can I cover? I guess talk about the gloves for a second. Usually I forget they're supposed to have gloves on, like, at absolutely all times, especially if they're in their fancy uniforms. So usually I just draw them, like, as hands and completely forget about it. But on the rare occasion that I do remember to draw gloves, I just make sure to add some... It's not super visible, because, they're tight gloves. But I just make sure to add a couple of wrinkles. And these, like, cuffs, technically would have been on the gloves themselves. like they are part of the they are part of like the jacket, but then they can also be part of the gloves, and the gloves would be on top, so that's actually what we're showing. So I make sure to add a couple of wrinkles here and then on the fingers if I'm like, you know, close up enough. Then I like to add these kind of stripes that are always on the back of gloves for some reason. I don't really know why. And then I'll just add like a side seam on each of the fingers if I'm really close up. What else? About like the sash, you know, the whole like waist area. Again, especially I'm drawing Anatole, and I need to just convey how boobalicious he is. I do like to make sure that the sash is kind of curved this way, like this, because I think it's it kind of like you can see, for example, here that is kind of curved to have this like peak around the middle of the body, and here as well. I just think it emphasizes the shape of like the rib cage and the chest area nicely, because like the ribs would be more or less like this, and then if I were to draw the boobs, they would be kind of like this, like with this kind of curve. So yeah, I think that works nicely. Also, if I am shading, I do like to, you know, do the shade kind of here, like in this shape again. What else? On the occasions that I am drawing the uniform like unbuttoned or partly unbuttoned or whatever, I do think it's useful to just like be aware of how it works. So for example here, you can see that like here's like the color working much like any other stiff color would, and then it's like here's one breast with 2 rows of buttons, and then you have like the other breast, or sometimes this would have 2 rows of buttons, sometimes it would just have these buttons. How do I explain this so it makes sense? Sometimes it would have 2 rows of buttons on the breast of the uniform that goes underneath, and then this one that goes over it would just have buttonholes. But then sometimes there will be buttonholes like here underneath, and then like kind of fake buttons that don't go through any holes on this lapel that goes over it as well. Yeah, so then like if it's hanging open, like you can't really see it, but like here you can kind of see that like this second lapel, you know, it's kind of the two breasts overlap, so if one is hanging open, it's gonna be like folding over itself. If they're sitting down, you'll have to have the like the tails of the coat either like this or like this, kind of trailing behind them. It looks cute, even though sometimes it muddies the figure a little bit. I think that's kind of it. Oh, I should mention the boots as well, because the boots are also kind of sexy. Well, they're kind of... I don't think, like, military boots changed that much over the course of, like, the entire 19th century. And it's not like you don't see these kinds of boots nowadays either. It's just like, you know, the leg, and then they kind of have this shape to them with like the front part. Like if I was drawing this from the front part is like this. If I was drawing it from the back, it's like this, and then from the side it looks like this. And then they're like pretty high boots because, well, all the characters I draw would have been riding horses at one point or another. Sometimes I actually remember to give them spurs. Very rarely, though. But the fun thing about boots is the wrinkles. Obviously, they're from an even thicker, even stiffer fabric. And obviously, like, the points where the foot bends are going to be very prominent. I mean, I wear leather shoes pretty much every single day, and, like, the wrinkling that they have on this area is insane. It's, like, prominent enough that you can see, like, the darker and brighter spots for where, like, the leather rubs against itself and, like, changes colors from the friction. And I like to add, if I'm coloring, I'm certainly gonna be doing, like, a nice shine here, but if I'm doing black and white, I'll just do, like, a little line to indicate that. Nice high heels, because they'd be riding those horses. And then, you know, I'm so enamored with these boots that even if they're, like, actively having sex, the boots are usually still on. Yeah, I could probably say something about the trousers, but I don't actually know that much about how they work. I know they have, like, I know that in a lot of old trousers of this kind, you have, like, I don't have opening here, but I've never really studied, like, where they actually open and how it's connected to the stuff in general. So I don't want to, like, talk completely out of my ass here, even though I am kind of talking out of my ass. Let's do them from the front. Like I mentioned, I'm not very good at drawing feet and shoes, so the finer points of, like, the shape kind of escape me. But the wrinkles do at least kind of help to, you know, make it, like, imply where the different parts are. Oh, this looks like ass. Oh, well. Okay, I think that's kind of it. Hopefully that was enlightening. I've been talking for over half an hour, which I guess is not completely unexpected, but it's not exactly what I was hoping to do. I'm now gonna go over some of my favorite historical examples. So if you don't want to sit here and listen to me gush about some old Russian uniforms, you know, this is your cue to leave. So hold on. This is from the book, what was it? Let me check. I have a couple of books that I, like, downloaded or borrowed from the library and then just scanned. Like, a couple of books specifically for the purposes of researching War and Peace fashion, because, you know, I'm really, really cool. So this one's from Russian Elegance. And Russian Elegance doesn't have a lot of examples that interest me. There's only, like, a couple there that are relevant to my interests. Most of it is from completely different time eras, and most of it is, like, women's gowns. But it does have this tailcoat, which is kind of useful just for the sake of, like, this is, like, not from War and Peace era. This is from over 20 years later. But if I'm drawing civilian clothes, which I don't always do, yeah, I'm usually drawing uniforms, but if I'm drawing civilian clothes, this is still a good reference for, like, kind of the general shape, like, with the high-waisted shape, and then, like, the tailcoat, and then, like, the double-breastedness, which is, like, here's what I talked about, like, you have the slits here, and then the real buttons here, and then either these are real buttons and there's slits, like, in the part of it, in the breast that's over the underlying breast, or these could be, like, fake buttons that aren't going for any holes. I think that might be what's happening here, because this breast doesn't really look like it's going down far enough to like, be attached to this one. And it's got the, like, really high collar, which was also a thing in the 1800s and 1810s. So they're still pretty useful, you know, like, as a thing to keep in mind. This one I had something else from that book. Oh, well. I'll just go as I have it. So I think these following examples are all going to be from Russian Splendor, which is such a gorgeous book. I'm so glad that I took photos of it before I had to return to the library. It is so beautiful. So these are, as you can see, all like more or less these would fit the latter part of War and Peace. And yeah, I mean, just look at this shape. Like this isn't even on anyone. Like no one is wearing it, but the shape is like so well formulated. And you can kind of see that this is like the shape of the double-breasted part that I draw with like these parts going up. And yeah, the mechanism of this whole thing is a bit different than what I draw. I'm not actually entirely sure like where this is connected to the fabric, but you can kind of see that the silhouette is there. And yeah, I mean, if you look at these cuffs, like look at how pretty that is. Like look at the decoration and like the buttons and the embroidery. And like, I mean, if you look at these lapels, they look kind of triangular, just because that's the way that they're like hanging on top of each other. But you know, this one is kind of hiding behind that one. If these were, you know, not hanging loosely, they would probably be kind of like this. So form this like kind of sparrow tail shape. Here's a single-breasted example, still gorgeous, and you can see that these tails of this coat are a bit more shaped, like a bit more tapered towards the end. They also have some nice epaulettes, which is kind of funny how epaulettes do look kind of weird when you look at them. Like, it's not like a metal part, it's all like spirally or braided fabric. Just some close-ups on the embroidery because, oh my god, like look at it. Look at these not mechanical, metallic threads and, I mean, actual like bits of metal sewn on. God, it's so beautiful. And here's another gorgeous one. This one is from just a little bit before War and Peace time. Again, I mean, these decorations are exquisite. And here again you have like, it's again double-breasted, but again in like a slightly different way. Like there's no overlapping of the fabric. This one, it just has like decoration to make it look like there's two kind of layers going on. Here's another one. Did I get yeah, so this one is from like quite a bit before War and Peace time. So this silhouette is actually not quite it. Like you can see that there's not that dramatic kind of cut-in being made, and it doesn't have that like very high collar, and oh, that's the main difference. And it's not quite so high-waisted, like because you have this waistcoat poking out. But still like a nice reference for, I don't know, just like the shape of the cuffs for one, with like these two buttons here does pop up a lot. And just like the general look, I guess. Here's some orders. I tried to only pick ones that would have existed around or slightly after War and Peace time. So, like, this one, which is it? I think this one is the pre-1856 one. And then, so these are from like about mid-19th century, so a little bit afterwards. But I just included them because occasionally I'll draw Andre with like not insignia, like some medals on him and stuff, especially in those, you know, those drawings where he looks like he's posing for a portrait. And I just included them to show that they all kind of have this like vague star shape. Yeah, it can either be like it's like an 8-pointed star, or sometimes they're like 6-pointed stars. Sometimes they're like 6-pointed stars with then like smaller arms popping out from over them. But yeah, just like something like this. Sometimes I include that on him. This is a really good example of, I think this is one of the earlier ones that I was showing off, just like a different angle. Oh, this one is again from Russian Elegance rather than Russian Splendor. And I mean, this one is actually from like exactly the right time period. And here the overlap is, you know, very small, but you can see how it happens really clearly. And I think you can see that like these buttons are going into slits, right? And then these are decorative. So it like helps me figure out how those should be arranged and stuff. Ah, this one is beautiful. So this one is not the right time period, like this is considerably later. But I included it just because it's so nice, and it totally looks like something Anatole would wear in the Great Comet. I mean, it looks very similar to what Anatole wears in Great Comet, and like you can see the chords really well, like the kind of fancy braiding happening here. I never understand why these chords have to go like into your jacket. That seems like it would be so uncomfortable. Yeah, and then you can get a good look at the epaulets as well, and the way that those are attached. Not that I ever draw that part, it's too much effort for me. And just like, I mean, the main thing is just the shape. And you can see that this is a later one because the tails are much shorter. Like, if I was drawing this on the War and Peace guy, it would be going like... but the shape of the coat is really nice. This one's again a lot later, but I just wanted to show it off because just like the hussars were so over the top, man. It's so uncalled for. Like, weren't you guys in need of, you know, war materials or something? How can you spare all these materials for like, and like the work hours as well? I mean, this would have all been handmade, right? For like all this decoration and all these buttons that don't do anything. And I'm always really confused as to why their uniforms seem to involve specifically a coat that you're not actually wearing, that's just hanging loosely off of you. Like, it's so impractical. Yeah, here's more insignia just to show like the shape of that again. Here is again some uniforms that would be more or less in the right time period, a little bit afterwards. But you know, still like the general correct. Like, I think you can tell that they're a bit later from the shape of the sleeves. I think this is like the beginning of the 1820s silhouette with like kind of puffy sleeves that really puff out from the... I mean, I don't know, maybe earlier ones had that as well, but I think it gets more dramatic, yeah, the further you go on. I had some more screenshots as well, hold on, that I just didn't copy paste here yet. Oh, everyone's favorite, Alexander the First, more or less in the right time period. And again, I mean, you can really see how much this uniform is doing for his silhouette, like the sassy pose. Like, I could literally just draw Anatole here. You know, why not? Why not? We have fun around here. For the record, I have just finished a really tedious online course that kind of makes me want to die. Not really. I'm just, you know, exaggerating for comedic effect. But that's why I'm eager to like let out all that boredom and frustration into some sexy War and Peace art. And then I have these photos from, or screenshots from, uniforms of the Napoleonic Wars, which are really useful. Not all of them are from the right time period for War and Peace. Like, this is from, you know, still the 18th century. But it's good for contrast. Like, you can see how the waist is not nearly as exaggeratedly accentuated. And it's not like, you know, if I was drawing this guy as a War and Peace character, there would be like, the coat would kind of end here, and then these tails of the coat, instead of starting kind of here, they'd go like all the way towards the back. What other ones? Here's a good one for like time period. So you can see that, you know, I suspect that more utilitarian belts would have been more common for like the average fucking soldier, but clearly these like fancy little sashes did exist and people did wear them. Yeah. Oh, here's a good look at the trousers though. Like, you can see that it has this kind of, I don't know, like, is it an opening? Is it so they can piss really easily? Or is it like decorative? Or is it like, I think it might just be like to take in the fabric. Like, if you want to adjust it to the individual soldier, you can like undo the seam and there's probably like fabric folded underneath there, and then you can tighten or loosen it. That's just my guess. Let's see. This is really funny to me because it looks so much like Andre in the Soviet War and Peace adaptation. Somehow the face is just really similar. But yeah, you can see like the sash again, and the double-breasted coat, and yeah, these boots are like more uniform in shape. I just give them that like nice cut-off shape to make them a bit more visually appealing. What else do we have? Here's a good one to show like the more utilitarian belt instead of the sash. Like, this is kind of what I draw Andrei or Dolokhov with. But you can also just barely see the slightly more like theatrical double-breasted design of this guy's coat. Ooh, you also have wait, where's the hussars? It's the cavalry. And did I not take screenshots of the, oh, there he is. Here's a hussar. So, you know, this is what Nikolai and Denisov would have been wearing. Like, look at that. So unnecessary. And look at this fucking, like, why would you involve that? Why would you include that in a soldier's uniform? Just a coat that goes over his other clothes, just hangs there uselessly. Like, was there a practical reason for it? I've never seen any depiction of the hussars actually like wearing that coat as a coat. It's always just decorative. I don't understand. Like, it must constrict your movements really heavily as well, right? Oh, and you can see that like the shape of the boots here is a bit more fun than like the very straight-edged ones that I showed before. Here's another hussar. They always have like multiple rows of buttons, and it's just so over the top, and they always have this like some weird decorative patterning happening over here. Oh, and here you can see like that shape of the boot. I kind of do. I do it a bit more dramatic, but you can see that's like a bit higher in the front where the knee is, and a bit lower in the back where the calf is. I think that probably would have made it more comfortable, especially for riding. Figured I'd pop in a, I don't know why this photo is so dogshit quality, but I thought it would be fun to showcase the Great Comet designs as well, because obviously I took some inspiration from them and they're like pretty iconic. Like, you see, this is kind of the bit in the trousers where you have like some patterning, and then you can see with like the really nice double-breasted coats, and you see the sexy boots with like lots of wrinkling everywhere. You know, it's really something. Like, I think it's a real testament to the power of Lucas Steele's acting and like stage presence, because out of costume as Anatole, I mean, I'm a lesbian, so I'm not like a great judge on the attractiveness of men, but I find him so unattractive. I'm sorry, Lucas Steele, but as soon as he starts playing Anatole, like, he just becomes so convincing and so like appealing. It really is something. Like, it really is just like a testament to the power of, you know, his stage presence. What am I doing? Yeah, this uniform has 3 rows of buttons, which, you know, is kind of funny because I would clock that more as a hussar uniform. but obviously it fits Anatole because he's such a peacock. And just to finish us off, I have this wonderful Google search result of AI generated Anatole. So, you know, smash or pass.